Welcome everyone to this episode of Remax INTEGRA Live. I'm pretty excited about this one. It's all about going paperless. And I got a few housekeeping notes to get started before we kind of get into the episode. So just before we get started, I'd like to say, if you want to watch past episodes of Remax INTEGRA Live, you can go onto Rise. So this is if you're in the Remax INTEGRA regions. So it's available to Rise. So if you go to launchpad.remax.com, you can enter Rise in, and you can find past episodes of Remax INTEGRA Live or the Quick Tips. The Quick Tips are exclusive to Rise, and then the regular episodes you can also get on our YouTube channel if you're not in the INTEGRA regions. We're also coming up, if you're in the Ontario and Atlantic Canada, we're having Connect events coming up. Our first one is this week in Huntsville. Then next week we're in Ottawa. You can register on bestagent.ca. So I hope to see a lot of you out there, and you can meet some of us. Even Donna will be at one in person, who's one of our guests today, and then I'll be there as well, which I'm sure is very exciting for a lot of people. And then just a quick final note, if you want to ask questions and have them answered on air, go on Twitter and use the hashtag RILive. We are half sharing it with Radio Italia, so you might see the odd Italian tweet. Ignore that. And you can come in and do the RI Live, and you can follow on with everyone who's great from Remax. But for a start, let me introduce my co-host, the apps and tech whiz kid and fellow training specialist, Dan Levine from our Boston office. Why don't you introduce yourself, Dan?
Hey everyone, I'm Dan. I'm doing all sorts of fun training stuff in New England. Awesome. And it's Red Sox opening day today, so go Red Sox.
I will never support that notion. Go Blue Jays. But that'll probably be the last time you hear that from anyone. All right. So our first guest today is Tom Watkey. Tom, along with his wife Judy, and I apologize, I'm just going to be reading the introductions off paper in our paperless episode. So Tom, along with his wife Judy, started his real estate career with Remax in 2001, specializing in Zionsville, Westfield, Carmel, Fishers, Indianapolis, Whitestown, and Lebanon, where they've sold hundreds of homes. The majority of their business is generated by referrals from current and past clients, family, friends, and other agents, which speaks volumes to their attention on providing the highest quality customer service. They leverage systems, advanced technology, and team power every day. Welcome, Tom, and why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. Yeah, Judy and I, we've been going since 2001. We both joined the business about the same time. We've always been with Remax. We used to own our own franchise. We eventually merged with Remax Ability Plus about in 2008, and have been going strong since. And as far as the topic goes today, the paperless, we definitely are very strong with the paperless agent, and we definitely do try to utilize that as much as we can. So it's a good topic to talk about, and I'm looking forward to sharing my thoughts about it.
Great. And if someone had a referral for you, what's the best way to send it to you?
Our best way to send it to would be sold@thewatkeys.com. That goes to both of us, and we definitely can take care of it.
Perfect. And our next guest, her bio was written by her, so keep that in mind. I am just reading it verbatim. So Donna McCauley has been in the industry for 2 years now, and in that time has earned Rookie of the Year in her office, as well as 100% Club in 2014. She is also a technology writer for a number of blogs and trains agents on using tech in their life and business. Donna is most commonly known online for her passion for all that is geeky, is a founding member of the League of Realtor Geeks, and causes all those who challenge her to Doctor Who trivia to cry like little girls. So welcome, Donna, and why don't you introduce yourself?
So, as Andrew said, I'm Donna McCauley from Remax here in Ottawa. Sorry, also just getting over a cold, so I apologize if I sound a little bit funny. So I have been doing a lot of training in terms of technology for both business and life, along with trying to help people get ramped up on using tech a little bit more in their business. And in terms of the Doctor Who trivia, I was challenged to a trivia at one of our Remax Connect events here in Ottawa, and I would like to use this as my official video reply to say it's on.
Perfect.
That's about it.
So, Lando Calrissian, you've been challenged, and it's been accepted. All right. Without further ado, let's get started. So today we're talking about going paperless, obviously, which we mentioned. Now, most people heard the term paperless. It's kind of a buzzword in our industry, and when I mean kinda, I mean like a huge one right now. Everyone keeps talking about it. And when I like to say, like, when I think of paperless, I don't necessarily think of, you know, I'm just trying to get rid of all the paper that I'm using. I more think of paperless as using technology and the different items that are out there just to make yourself more productive and more efficient. You can still use paper, but if you're using things properly, you don't need it at all, and you can save a lot of time and energy. So let's just get started right away with our first question. It's actually going to be a really softball. I'm just going to lob it up for you. We'll start with Tom for the first one, but can you give us a brief history of how long you've been paperless and what made you make that decision to do that?
Well, it's probably been for pretty much strong, excuse me, the last 2 years. It's just the fact that, prior to that, you'd have these big, thick files that you'd stick in your file box at home. And it just got to the fact where, it just became ridiculous. We're using so much paper. And now with today's technology, with today's apps that we can use, electronic signatures and whatnot, the use of paper it's been very much cut in half, and it's been kind of nice. Just using the technology we have with the laptops and the iPads and phones and whatnot, you can do just so much of it just from across the internet and not have to worry about passing papers back and forth.
Yeah, that's a huge advantage to it. It's awesome. Like I was paperless too when I was selling, and yeah, it's the exact same for me. And how about you, Donna?
So I've been paperless since I joined, because before I was in real estate, I was a system administrator for an IT company, and I could not stand the concept of paper when I joined. So when I joined my team, because my partners have been in a lot longer than I have, I took one look at it and said, "Oh, sweet Lord, no, that's not happening." So I very quickly moved us over to a lot of Google platforms. I moved us over to things like Evernote, just because it seemed so inconvenient to have to carry paper with me when I had my iPad, I had my phone, I was always connected to the internet. Even in the rural properties, I was still getting access to it. I just felt a lot safer having everything in the cloud. So if CRA comes after me, if somebody needs paperwork, I've always got it online. I will always have access to it. If my house burns down, I'm good.
For our American friends, the CRA is our IRS. All right, Dan?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, and by the way, big cheers for using Evernote. Andrew and I are especially just massive Evernote heads. If that's... What's that?
If you couldn't tell already.
Yeah, big Evernote heads. And so I'm curious for both of you, and Donna, you can go first. What devices do you use? Like, what's surgically attached to your hip at all times?
I start going through withdrawal if I don't have my Nexus 5 on my hand at all times. Like, I can, honest to God, it's on my lap right now. Well, let's be honest, I was not going to be separated even during now. So I always have that on me. In a best case scenario, I usually have my Pebble with me as well, so I use smartwatch technology,
Nice.
just because I find it a lot easier with my showings, because I can very quickly check and see who's messaging me. Aside from that, I use my iPad a lot for showings. I had an iPad for ages and used it for absolutely nothing until I got Evernote, and then it also became a requirement in my cars. And the rest of the time I'm just on my laptop, which is primarily due to the fact that in Ottawa, the MLX system does not work on anything but Internet Explorer or anything that will support a Flash platform.
Ooh.
So I cannot ditch the desktop yet, but I'm hoping to go completely mobile eventually.
That'd be nice.
And isn't it true that isn't Internet Explorer going away? And
they are redeveloping it. I'm hoping that'll be kind of... I have been told that we are moving to an HTML5 compatible platform at some point in the near future, which is probably also prompted by the death of Internet Explorer.
If anyone on this call still uses Internet Explorer, can you go download Chrome or Firefox right now? If you're on Safari, that's okay too.
Yeah, if you have a Mac, then you've been fine.
Yeah.
So Tom, what about you? What devices are like surgically attached to your hip?
Well, we don't even carry laptops anymore, so we definitely do everything from our iPad. Also, we have Samsung phones. We are not completely Apple yet. I did just got a Android ellipsis, and we now take that on our showings and with our buyers, so they can just hand that to them, and they can take all the notes and all the pictures that they want to. And when they're done, they can email it to themselves, and they have all the pictures and data and their notes right there when they get back home.
Excellent. So, wow, we have 2 Google people on this.
Yes. Everyone should be on Google. Google is going for world domination. All right, so since you guys are both kind of on both devices here for a bit, we'll start with Donna, and I kind of know her opinion on this slightly because we talked about it before. What's your opinion on the which is better debate, Apple, Samsung, and I'll say or other because no one actually should be using BlackBerry anymore?
Well, there's also the Windows Phone option, but I don't necessarily encourage that either. Sorry. I hate having a cold. So I am entirely a Google fangirl. I did a lot of testing. So I used to have to actually do corporate level testing on which phone would be best for a mass amount of users. I tested Apple, I tested Google, I tested Windows phones, God help me. And so there are some pluses and minuses to a lot of them. I know that Apple has a much easier to use interface if you're just getting into the tech. So I am a little bit biased. Andrew knows my full-fledged feelings on this. But in terms of if you're working with, my first mobile device, Apple has a far more intuitive interface for sure. If you're a power user or want full control over your device or be able to sync with things that are not other Apple products, I would say Google is the way to go. So when I have somebody first coming in, I generally recommend Google. And so I like my Nexus devices. The Samsung devices are phenomenal. Anything that's running an Android platform, I'm pretty happy with.
You just don't have as many things to run on it.
I've got plenty to run on my Android devices, and the developers for my Android devices don't have to pay $99 a year, so I get lots more free apps.
Just a lot less apps. Not that I'm biased to Apple or anything.
Not at all.
Like I'm filming this on a MacBook with my iPhone and my iPad sitting right next to me, and then I have another MacBook on my desk and another iPad there too. But, whichever one you choose.
I'll give credit where credit is due, but I would say that if you actually want full control over your devices and to not look like a hipster all the time, then Android's definitely your way to go.
Right, but maybe you are more of a hipster because you're trying to say you were on it before it was cool. But we could talk about this for a while. So let's get Tom's opinion on it.
Well, I agree with what Donna said. We pretty much stick with Google. On our iPads, we are running, the Chrome, and we do, try to link everything up. We sometimes have issues with, when it comes down to linking and syncing with everything, but I think we've got that all nailed down. Like her, we got iPads, we got Android tablets, we use Samsung phones, so, we utilize the equipment we have, and it's working great for us, and we just continue to develop all that.
Great. So how do you find, since you have like a Samsung phone and an Apple iPad, how do you find connecting them together and using them in conjunction with one another?
Well, a lot of it has to do with, where we store our files. We use Dropbox, so everything is stored there. We use, the link between the two. I use Gmail, so I have that on my iPad and I have it on my phone. So everything's connected that way. It just comes down sometimes with electronic signatures. We might have an issue here and there, but we do have workarounds and we get it done.
Great. That's awesome. That's awesome. And so you guys are more on the Dropbox side because that's another whole debate that could but won't take place today. But the whole Google Drive versus Dropbox debate. You guys side more on the Dropbox side of things, right?
Yes, we use primarily Dropbox, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy Google Drive's set of things, but I am actually primarily a Dropbox user. I think that's mostly because that's what I started with. It was just the first thing that I came across. But just the ability to be able to sync Dropbox across all my devices, and I know Google Drive can do the same thing as well, has been hugely useful. And I imagine as I start moving more towards Google Docs for anything else that I'm doing, maybe not necessarily in terms of storing all of my documents and things like that, but Google Docs with being able to do the spreadsheets or being able to use it instead of a word processor. I will probably eventually make that shift, but for now, Dropbox is my ultimate place of storing everything. The only downside with that is for all the folks in Ontario, there is a problem with storing things like your FinTrack forms in there, because it's technically not legal to store personal information for a client on an American server.
Interesting.
So, you do need to come up with an alternative for that one.
Dropbox does. Yay.
We have a few different regulatory issues up here since most of our stuff ends up being sent to American storage sites and then comes back. So we have issues where then it's opened up to the American government being able to see it, and whole other bag of worms that we're not going to get into today.
I could do an entire thing on the issues with being a techie in Ontario, but that's another day.
It's probably the worst province for it.
With you guys going totally paperless, and it seems like it's been, you guys have a good track record for doing that. Is it easier? Is it better for you, or is it better for your clients, or both, or neither? I doubt it's neither, but Don, we'll start with you.
Well, it's definitely easier for us. There's no doubt about it. But it's also easier for the client. I mean, to be able to, share, like, again, we can share Dropbox. We also use DocuSign Transaction Room, which used to be Cartaby. And with that, you can share the folder that they have access to. So they don't even have to maintain a copy of the documents that we use. It's just you can put it in there. They can grab it if they want to. They can print it out if they want to. But that is a great advantage to them. And when it comes down to closing, all you really have to do is add the closing docs to that same folder, and everybody has access to it, and they don't have to have a hard copy of it.
That's awesome. And so, do you ever find people? Just a follow-up question on that. Do you ever find people like checking in on that, like your clients checking in on the documents and where they are and stuff like that?
Yeah, you can tell when they come in and check on it. You send them the link to it. They sign up for it, and then you can tell when they go in and access the drive or the file to check their documents or to download or something like that. So yes.
Awesome. And Donna, what about you?
I know it makes my life easier about 1,000,000 times over, just due to the fact that I do have access to all of my files everywhere. If especially things like my showing feedback and stuff like that. I literally negotiated deals from a Taco Bell drive-thru just because I had everything with me. I was waiting in line. Why not negotiate an offer? Here's my showing feedback. It's on my phone. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, they hated the carpets. The rest of it was nice. So it's definitely made my life a lot easier. It's kept me a lot more organized. It's kept me compliant with all the regulations. In terms of my clients enjoying it, I still have clients tell me because I can use DocuSign, and I use DocuSign as often as I can. Unfortunately, legislation says I can't use it for an agreement of purchase and sale, but I can use it for a lot of other things, and my clients have raved about how much they have found it useful, especially with the millennials. Nobody has a printer, nobody has a fax, so it has saved them massive amounts of time. In terms of when I'm showing some of my clients lots of properties, I send them the link to Evernote, let them go in there, take a look. I have all of my notes for what they said about the property, all of my notes about, hey, this is kind of how it compares in the neighborhood. They just open up the Evernote chat, send me a message, like, hey, Donna, could you get the utilities for this place? No problem. Put the utilities into the same note. Client always has access to it. So I know that they have absolutely loved it so far.
Great. One question that I have for both you guys, just to follow up on that. Donna, you mentioned millennials. One myth that I hear, I don't know if it's fact or fiction, so here's truth time, is that I might hear, my client base is too, quote unquote, too old to want.
I've had a lot of people, so I find that all age groups enjoy it. I find that it's more of a requirement with my millennials because they are the most vocal if I hand them a piece of paper going, what am I going to do with this? Though I have, of course, you always have the exceptions to the rule. I have the occasional millennial that said, "Could you print this out for me?" Yeah, no problem. But on the older scale of things, so long as they have access to a computer and they, if they can use Facebook and they can use their email, then they generally also appreciate this as well. If they do struggle with email, or they're still sending you those chain letters saying if you don't send this to 40 people, then your house is going to catch fire, odds are those types of people are not going to enjoy it as much. So it's really reading your audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tom, what about you? What are you guys seeing?
That's definitely what Donna said is true. The younger crowd definitely wants to see the paperless. They want to be able to do the e-signatures. They want to do everything from their phone or from their iPad. We do have clients that are the older generation that, in fact, we just had one just recently. When we sent the electronic signatures to him, he just raved about it. He said, "This is fascinating. This is great. This makes it so much easier. I don't have to run to because they may not have a printer with a scanner on it, so they would have to run to someplace in fact. That way, this eliminates it. We can definitely make things go a lot quicker and a lot smoother. So it goes across all generations, but like Donna says, the younger crowd definitely requires it.
I like how you guys put that. I really like how you guys put that.
So when you guys are kind of out doing your advertisements, things like that, talking to clients, listing presentations, buyer consultations, are you advertising that you're paperless, or is it just something you're doing kind of more quietly on the side? It's just part of how you run it, or is it part of how you advertise to potential clients? We'll start with Donna on this one.
For me, I definitely use it in all of my listing presentations. Because we put such a heavy emphasis on a lot of online advertising and things like that too, we very rarely use print media these days. It just kind of makes for a nice segue into talking about all of the advantages in terms of when you're working with us in the paperless aspect of things, and how everybody can be happier in a transaction because it goes a lot smoother because everybody has access to all the digital documents, things like that. So we use it in listing presentations. I also use it in my buyer presentations, just to tell them, it really makes a difference. I find not enough people are doing that with the conversations with their buyers. It's just like, hey, go straight to it. Let's just show houses and stuff like that. But you also need to tell them why they're working with you, even if, you're not in competition. So being able to tell them things like, walk through the entire process, and here's how I'm going to help you with that buying process. Here's how I can make your life easier with Evernote. Here's how I'm going to make your life easier with DocuSign. And I find that creates kind of a loyalty that you really can't break, because not enough people are having that conversation.
That's true. They in our listing presentations and our buyer meetings, we do sit down, we do talk with them, we tell them what's coming up, we show them how the electronic signatures work, how we're going to share files and things like that. So definitely that's when we sit down and talk to people. As far as advertising someplace where we don't. It's just the fact that it's sitting down with the clients, making sure they understand how the process is going to run, what they can expect, how they can expect communications with us, and we just go with that. So that's where we sit down and just really talk about the paperless aspect of the business.
It's also it's also in addition to, when we're doing our, pitch as to, hey, here's why you should work with me.
Right.
You're also always advertising it in just every little thing that you do. When you're taking out the iPad and you're taking pictures of that crack in the wall that they're concerned about, and then showing it to them afterwards, you're constantly advertising that as you're using it type thing. And it's those things that they really talk about with their friends too, because it's like getting kind of the bonus features in a car. First thing people talk about when they get a new car, oh yeah, it totally has satellite radio and built-in GPS. My real estate agent totally comes with built-in document storage and, sends me pictures of the houses. You get to be those features with the new car. It's kind of cool.
I really like how you put that, Donna, especially with just like the wow factor, right? Because, I think you both said it very well. Clients have a lot of options out there, and as do their friends and their referrals and all that. And so to have that wow, like, oh my gosh, they're awesome because they do this. It's that distinguishing point, right? And so what if I'm just starting out, right? If I'm just starting out and I live in somewhere in the Boston area, let's say. What do I do? What do I have to start? Like, do I start with Dropbox? Do I start with getting a certain device? Tom, where do you guys really start out, and then how do you kind of develop it after?
Well, we started off definitely with the iPad. That's where everything really started, with the technology. Having that made life a lot easier. And then you start incorporating the apps that go along with it. And those are the apps like DocuSign, Dropbox, DocuSign Transaction Room, Zip Forms. All those electronic aspects to the business make it so much easier. And so to get started, that's where it is. I mean, you're not necessarily having an iPad. You just need a tablet, something that is portable that you can take with you to your showings, to your listing appointments, to whatever the case may be, so you have everything access right where you are at the moment you need it.
Great. Tom, I have a question from Twitter for you, since you brought up transaction rooms, Dropbox, things like that. So the question is, why Dropbox? Why not a transaction management solution such as DocuSign, Transaction Room, Dotloop, or Repri?
Well, we do use it. We use the DocuSign Transaction Room, which is it's very similar to the Droploop and things like that, where all your files go into it. You can share the directory with your office administrators, with your clients, with your partners, whatever the case may be. They're all right there. So it's just what we have developed using and we're familiar with. So we started with DocuSign. Transaction Room came along. Like I said, it used to be Cartavy, and then DocuSign bought it, so they incorporated everything together. So everything's in one platform, and that's what we're used to using, and that's just what we continue to use.
I find that also one thing to keep in mind when you're setting people up for things like that is for a lot of folks, they're getting DocuSign directly through their offices, and if you leave that office, you have to switch DocuSign accounts, you might lose it. Having that redundancy by keeping a second platform, like storing all your documents in Evernote or storing them all in Dropbox or Google Drive, is a good way of just, in the event that something happens, you still have it even if your office doesn't.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest reasons, like when I was paperless, that I used Dropbox or Google Drive. It was backing up where I had it saved everything else. Because for me, everything was on Evernote, and then I just made sure it was backed up elsewhere. I mean, I didn't use DocuSign because we couldn't do offers yet, so I was kind of waiting for offers to be allowed until I got DocuSign. So in the meantime, I was using PDF Expert, which I probably wouldn't do anymore, but separate discussion. So just out of curiosity, how much time per transaction or money do you guys think you save by going paperless? And we'll start with Tom.
Well, dollar-wise, it's probably tough to figure out. But, I mean, as far as time-wise, it saves a lot of time. I mean, you can send out that email for that electronic signatures, and it comes in right there, and then you can turn around and get it right back. So the time that you require for responses and getting it to the other agent is cut dramatically, because you don't have to sit there and wait for somebody to fax it over or find a fax machine, wherever the case may be. Everything is quickly done. It does save a lot of time, a lot of frustration. That's probably the biggest thing. It saves a lot of frustration.
And gas mileage.
And gas mileage, definitely, yeah. You used to have to drive to go to a client's house to get a signature. That is no longer needed.
Yeah, I know for me, in terms of, I could not put a dollar value on how much I've saved, but that's mostly because a more organized agent who could tell you how much they are worth hourly or something like that would definitely be able to, because I have saved a ridiculous amount of time with this. Especially using things like DocuSign's workflows. So once it's signed up on one spot, and then it automatically sends off to the lawyer, and it automatically sends off to somebody else, makes things a lot more punctual. Made it a lot easier to use. Being able to send documents from my couch in my basement, because you know what, despite being a real estate agent, no, I don't have a printer at home. I am paperless. I do not have a printer. I don't have fax. However, I do have an app on my phone that lets me fax directly out to people. I can receive faxes through my DocuSign. And there are a lot of apps that will end up doing something like that. I don't know. I think Dotloop has the fax option as well. I don't think. No, there's another one that's really popular in Ontario.
eFax. Yeah, I was just going to say eFax as well.
eFax. Get it as a standalone, That's what I've used prior to having DocuSign. It's been phenomenal. So yeah, just massive amounts of time saved, and it means that I can quickly send off documents or get signatures while I'm out with friends. You know, if I'm out spending time with my family, if I'm out spending time with my friends, I can just say, hey guys, one sec. Okay, instead of having to drive to the office. So it saved me a lot of business time and personal time at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, Donna, the you know, in the Boston area, we got, I think it was like 3 feet of snow in 3 weeks. And so whether you're in your basement voluntarily or whether you're trapped there, being able to conduct transactions from wherever you are, whenever you want to, it makes things a lot easier.
So in the Canadian winter.
Yeah, no kidding. One of the transactions I did, we were getting very close to the deadline. I had to get to my client, and my client was an emergency room nurse. In rush hour traffic in Ottawa, there was no way I was going to make it out to her, get her signatures, and get back to the office in time before my irrevocable was up. So that was the day I first installed Cam Scanner. So because I had the physical documents, because again, you can use DocuSign for a lot of these documents in Ontario. So I had the paper copies, drove out to her, had her sign them, used my phone to take pictures of the actual documents, and got it sent off to the other side. So I was still within my timelines.
All right, so that's fantastic. Cam scanners. All right, so let's dive into the the recommendations. You mentioned Cam scanner. You mentioned eFax. We've already talked a lot about Dropbox and Evernote and Google Drive. Tom, what would you say it sounds like Donna mentioned some stuff like that, just some like peripheral things that she uses. Are there things that you use that something like an eFax or stuff like that to handle transactions a little smoother also?
Well, and we've talked about the apps that we use, the DocuSigns. The Cam Scanner, like Donna mentioned, is a fabulous tool, absolutely the best. You can take a picture of that document and send it over to them, and it's just like just like anything else you've created. It comes into a PDF file. You can get the signatures. So I mean, what we use for our forms and whatnot is zip forms. I don't know if you guys up there in Canada use zip forms or not, but we use that extensively, and that's connected also up to DocuSign. So you can create your files, create your purchase agreement and whatnot in zip forms, get the signature right there. It comes back to DocuSign. You can put it back into your transaction. So everything is integrated together to where we can, it's seamless when it comes down to taking that document that you first started in zip form and taking it all the way through and storing it in whether you store it in DocuSign, the transaction room, or whether you store it in Dropbox, wherever the case may be. So those 5 apps right there are the key ones we use, and we use them pretty much extensively.
Excellent. So the use of zip forms, was that something that you guys organically said, all right, we want to use this, or was that something that was from your MLS? Like, in New England, there are a lot of MLSs that have zip forms as part of the the MLS platform. So can you go into that a little bit?
We did. Zip forms was pretty much introduced through our board, and I think that's primarily what everybody uses. I don't think I've ever heard anything else being used other than zip forms. So that is why we've been using it for years now. I don't know when we got started with it, but definitely when we got away from the books of listing homes and things like that, we got into zip forms, got into electronics, and so it's been a steady use ever since then.
Sure. And Donna, what about you?
So I am an Evernote user, and I know people hear that over and over and over and over again. I swear, if I see one more Evernote 101 class, I'm probably just going to have to turn around and walk away. Because there are some good ones. Don't get me wrong, and I think everybody should take a look at it as an honest way for note keeping and stuff like that. Because having evaluated a lot of different apps, Evernote did hold up very well. I will still never use it as a document repository, just because I find that there are better applications for that. That's where I switch over to Dropbox. Everything that I have applied to the business has been to address a pain point. So because I came into an existing team, I could very easily take a look at what their issues were and then find a solution that fit it. So everything down to Dropbox is my primary for documents. Evernote is for all of my notes, plus sending them to my client. It is my client-facing tool primarily, so all of my clients see a lot of it. I use things like CamScanner a lot. PDF Expert, when it comes to things like if I need to have somebody do something on the iPad, PDF Expert has really saved me. It is a pain in the butt to learn, though. I found it was a very steep learning curve. And Expensify is one that I use a lot as well, because while we talk about our business in terms of document repositories and signatures, there are other aspects of the business that can really be handled digitally and with less paper, because tools like Expensify, it will save you money and time in terms of, instead of handing a shoebox to your accountant and then paying an hourly cost for them to sort through it, you can get an app like Expensify, which does your GPS, will actually turn on GPS and track your mileage for you. You take pictures of your receipts, and it will automatically create the expense forms for you. Stores it in the cloud so that you have it all available in the event that, heavens forbid, you get audited. There are a lot of different ways that you can implement technology into your business aside from just your document repositories. So pretty much anything that there's a pain point for, odds are there's an app for it. As much as I hate to use that tagline.
Well, there's there's something that you mentioned a while ago about using your iPad for showings and for open houses. What do you use? What app do you use for that?
That's all Evernote, because my clients don't see a lot of the other apps that I use in the background and stuff like that. They'll see DocuSign when I send them documents, but the rest of the time they're just seeing Evernote. They get a link to their notebook right away in their buyer section. That way they have all of their notes. They can make additional notes. I give them edit privileges on there. And then I have my own separate notebook for them so that I can keep track of things like putting my PDFs of my comps, because we can't share out a lot of that information to them. And then just using things like that. So my clients are seeing Evernote used on a regular basis. They see me using it in person, and then they get those files after the fact. So they're very involved in that process.
Great.
Excellent.
We
Excellent.
do have
I will
recommend Twitter.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
All right. So how many apps are actually needed for real estate? And for each of you, how many do you actually use daily? We'll start with Tom.
Wow. On a daily basis, there's probably those top 5. DocuSign, Transaction Room, Zip Forms, CamScanner. I dabble in Evernote, not as much as I probably should or could. And then so those 5 there are, as far as I'm concerned, your 5 top ones that you'll use every day, and those are the ones you need to have, whether it's on your laptop, whether it's on your desktop, whether it's on your iPad. You can have them all there, and they can all be integrated together.
I could not count the number of apps that I use. I really couldn't. I try and clean them out on my phone on a regular basis, but the core critical ones that I definitely come across are my client-facing ones, which are always going to be Evernote and DocuSign. There's the ones that I use for my own organization side of things, so that's going to be my Dropbox, which they never get access to. I have, again, Expensify for things like tracking all of my business expenses. In terms of team organization, because I find there's an entire folder on my phone for just the stuff that I have to use for the team that involves things like Google Keep to be able to assign task lists to people, get things checked off. I can send a Keep list over to my admin assistant and say, hey, here's my checklist for what needs to be done. And then it also collides with my personal, because I have a recurring one for Wednesday nights that is geolocation triggered, which is, there are a ton of different apps for to-do lists for sharing information among your team and things that need to be done. I like Google Keep personally, just because I can share things out with my team. It doesn't work quite as well as Trello for the sharing aspect of things, but it's the geolocation reminders that have been really big for me, because we have such frantic schedules. You know, if you take a look at any of our Google Calendars and all of our team, that's another big team app for us is Google Calendar. We don't always know where we're going to be, so setting a reminder for, say, taking out the garbage and setting it for 6 o'clock every Wednesday, because that's when you think you're going to get home. Let's face it, you're not getting home at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday. You're going to have showings, or you're going to have to go and get groceries. You're going to miss it. You're going to snooze it. You're not going to remember. But if you set it location-based, as soon as I pull up into my driveway, I get the reminder on my phone saying, take your garbage out. You can use that for everything. If, next time you're in the office, you really need to remember to, get that document out or drop something off to the front desk. Set it up on your phone as a geolocation reminder. Have it automatically pop up on your phone as soon as you come in.
I like that.
You can also be very... Oh, sorry, Dan.
I was going to say one of the things that I would recommend also. Actually, I don't know if it's available in Canada, but Open Home Pro for open houses.
Oh my God, yes. We do use it. I love it.
Not really for Android though in Canada. If you're on a tablet with Android, some people have been able to download it, but for the most part, Open Home Pro isn't. If you want an equivalent, you can try AM Open House. That's kind of the Android equivalent of Open Home Pro here in Canada.
It's been one of the few reasons why I haven't fully converted over to Android. So while I am completely an Android fangirl, I do have the iPad. I'm not just using iPad as a generic term for tablets. It is an actual iPad. Because when I joined real estate, it was the only one that Remax had developed the tools for, so I couldn't get a lot of those apps on my Android devices. And for Open Home Pro, because Open Home Pro, that would fall under my client-facing ones, just because it helps keep me organized instead of those little pieces of slips of paper when people first, sign in at your open house. And there have been statistics to show that they are a lot more honest when they're less likely to write down a fake name. I don't know if those stats are actually true because that's all coming from Open Home Pro. But I do like how on Sunday it automatically emails out my clients or the people who signed in saying, hey, thanks for coming by my open house, as well as the fact that I can contact potential leads for all the people who said, no, I'm not working with an agent that evening, and I have their email address saying, hey, thanks for coming by. I just wanted to give you some of those details.
Yeah. Tom, have you guys played with that at all?
We have. We've tried it both ways, handwritten, Open Home Pro, and I think it's sometimes just the fact that handing somebody an iPad and when they walk into an open house, I think it intimidates some people sometimes. Again, it has to do with the age of the person walking in. That some people are going to think it's really cool. Other people think it's, what are you handing me this for? I just want to come in and look. So you've got to play the game. You got to just figure out which way is the best. And if you use both of them, you can. If not, well, it's kind of a choice.
I had actually seen that too. Some people just going, whoa, what is this iPad thing? This is lifelong commitment. It's like I just proposed to them. And one of the things that I found was a little bit easier was, I will actually show you what I've got. So I have a keyboard with my iPad, and this is what I use every time. So I very rarely actually use the keyboard on this thing, but I will use it for open houses, just because A, it's staying propped up and I don't have to touch it, and B, it's a little bit more reminiscent of a laptop, which even the technophobes have gotten used to over the years of having laptops. So I found that they were definitely a lot more receptive when I gave them an input method they were used to.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I have one more follow-up question to that. What about for listing presentations? Have you guys started using anything, or is it anything special, or is it PowerPoint? Tom, we'll start with you.
Well, we use our iPads for a listing presentation. Our company has developed one, and they update it every year, and we're waiting on the new version to come out. So we sit down, we have the iPad there, we go through our presentation. So we are doing electronically. That's the funny thing about when you go to a listing presentation. Some people don't even want to hear any of that stuff. They just want to get to the facts. So you use that. You got to understand the person you're going to talk to, whether or not if they feel like it's going to be good or not. So, but yes, the iPad is definitely the item used for listing presentation and a buyer's presentation too.
Excellent. And Donna, what about you?
I only recently switched over to doing digital listing presentations, and as I said, most of what I've implemented has been to address pain points. In this particular issue, we have our listing binders all set up with all our updated stats and things like that, and so they created it in PowerPoint, so my business partner Mo did that, and then prints it out, puts it in the binder, and gives it to Susan and I. And Susan had them in her car, and I did not have one for my listing appointment, and I had misplaced mine, so couldn't steal hers. And I went, hey, here's an idea. We already have it created in PowerPoint. Why not just load the document onto my iPad? I have not switched back since. I can constantly update my slides. I don't have to reprint things to make it look all pretty. It is just worlds easier in my books.
Sure.
And because I find it hasn't intimidated too many people with my listing presentations, because I think people are starting to get used to seeing computers out there and such. And also that I'm not doing anything huge or flashy or showy or anything like that. I'm literally just swiping through my iPad like I would any other document.
Awesome. All right, so you both have mentioned the whole generational thing and how certain people feel certain ways, but then how some people in different generations might feel differently than what the normal, I guess, stigma would be that you might put in place. So, Donna, we'll start with you. What do you guys do for people who are a little kind of shy about going paperless, or just they want something that they can like physically feel?
If I think it's going to be a situation, like if they've given any kind of cues over the phone or anything like that, then I'll generally bring both with me and then see which one they're more receptive to. You know, the first appointment is really where we determine, are we going to stick with the paperless side of things, or are we going to go with the iPad, which makes them a lot more comfortable. It's very common in listing presentations, especially when you're showing the comparables and things like that. Like some of the presentations I've done with my partner Susan, we'll give her the papers, I'll use the iPad, and then especially when you're meeting with a family, sometimes we can just put the papers in front of the parents and then show the iPad to the kids. You know, it's really reading the audience, but I like to have both with me. I don't think we're quite at the point where you can go entirely one or the other. We are in that transition state.
Yeah, really good point. Tom, what about you?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You have to feel out the client, see how they are going to think when you get down and actually sit down at the kitchen table and talk to them. You're always going to have those clients that want that feel that paper in their hands, and it's easier with the comps to have the actual comps, the piece of paper handed it to them. When you're trying to do comps on an iPad, they're only you only get such a big screen, so it's kind of tight. So having that piece of paper in front of them makes them feel more comfortable. They can really read the details. So I don't think like Donna says, we'll never ever go completely paperless, but we definitely are getting to that point where we do a lot less with paper than we have in the past.
Sure.
Yeah, I was often similar when I was doing it. Most of my clients I'd bring up in like either listing presentation or buying consultation, just talking to them like, all right, I am normally doing my business paperless, but if you're not comfortable with that, let me know and I'll bring some paper options for you. Like the home inspector I often recommended, he didn't even have paper copies that he sent out, and he would often just email them one, and I had a client who hated that, so I just went, printed it out, put it into a binder, and I just gave them a paper copy. So sometimes you got to accommodate them, and it happens.
Right.
Yeah. All right, so that's the questions we have set up. So now we're actually going to do some audience questions. Although most of the comments on Twitter were not audience questions, they're more just general points like, Donna, your listing presentation may be under your couch. And what's a fax machine? Is this a teleporting device? So, but we'll get to some of the actual questions that came up. So first up, where is it? Here. So how do you do your showings from start to finish without having to print out your MLS sheets? We'll start with Donna.
So whenever I set up an appointment for whenever I book my showings, the first thing I do is I hop over to MLS, I get the details on who I need to contact and what the address of the property is, and I put it into Google Calendar. And that way I have the address, so my phone will send me that notification 15 minutes in advance saying, hey, you're supposed to leave now. Then I keep the lockbox information all listed in there so that when I get there, I can just pull up my phone and I actually have the details of the confirmation of the showing. I pop into, at the same time while I'm doing that, I actually save a copy of the MLS sheet into my Evernote so that I'll have those details on my Evernote before I go to the actual appointment. On the Ottawa Real Estate Board, So for our MLX, we do have the Save PDF option. However, I noticed some don't have that, so I actually have a PDF printer installed on my laptop. So for anything that doesn't have an option to save as a PDF, I can choose to print the page and then choose my printer as PDF creator, and then that way I end up with a PDF of it that I can then put into Evernote. So when I actually get into the showing, I just pull it up. I have my space to actually write down all of my notes as well as the actual MLS sheet.
And do you have them take notes on your iPad, or are you taking notes for them?
I tried giving them the iPad, but I found a lot of my clients would either come with their own notebooks because they wanted to write their own notes or had their own device that they were writing things down on. So now primarily I'm taking the notes for them, just writing down things that they say. I know some people use the voice cues. I found that the auto dictation was sometimes distracting or just didn't pick up on words particularly well because something tells me they weren't commenting on the cookies in the living room. It was probably something like they can't place a couch. So I generally take the notes for them, quickly shorthand, and then I fill in the rest later on.
Great. How about you, Tom?
Primarily, when we get the request is showing, we go into our MLS system, and from there we can go directly into our showing software to where we just put in the address. It automatically schedules it, notifies the agent, and then once it's approved, it automatically comes back into my Google Calendar and shows the day and the time that it's showing there, and also the showing instructions. So there's nothing that has to be written down between the time that I schedule it and the time I get there. Now, once we get there, I do take my notes as the client is going through. And it's like Donna says, sometimes they'll bring their own notebook or their cameras or whatever the case may be and walk around. So a lot of times they want me to take the notes as they're going along so they can concentrate on what they're looking at. And so, that's primarily what I do. I primarily take the notes for them. And once we're done with that, then we can share the notes, like we've done before, whether it's Dropbox, DocuSign, just simply emailing them.
I also really enjoy the whole, I know a lot of people hand people the iPad and everything, but I think Tom that really has it right with the whole taking the notes for them type thing, because while they are going to be taking their own notes, there may be things that clients just don't think about. I'm writing down the age of the furnace as I go through.
Right.
I'm noted, clients don't always think about that kind of thing. So it's really important, and it really makes you look knowledgeable, especially in things like your listing presentations. One of the first things I'll do when I go in is just say, hey, take me on a tour of your house. And I have a template pre-created in Evernote with all the questions that I want to ask as I go through, everything down to making the notes that I'm going to need for when I do list their property on MLS. Is it carpet wall to wall? When was the roof done? Natural gas furnace, or is it electric baseboard heating? And then when I can send people that note afterwards, it's like, hey, just wanted to give you a summarization of our meeting today, especially if I'm in competition, sending them the price that I recommended for them, list of upgrades that I recommend, will a stager be necessary? Yes, no. They love it. It has gotten me it has won me so many listing presentations when I'm in competition that they know that I was taking those notes as I was going through the house. It's glorious.
That's awesome. Talk about that wow factor, right? There's
also, I have a question.
Sure,
Yep.
go ahead.
What is this showing software that you're booking where you can just go and book things online? Because if I didn't have to call every single brokerage in Ottawa, that'd be awesome.
It's called Centralized Showing. It's based out of, I think, Arkansas, and they do it all over the country. It's been a blessing. It really has, because you don't have to worry about it contacting the agent or doing it. They do that for you. You simply, you can do it online. You can call them. You can do it. And once it's confirmed, then a confirmation is sent to you. If it's the listing of yours, the seller gets an email. But first of all, they get a text to prove it or not. Then if they don't answer that, they get an email. If they don't answer that, then they get a phone call. So that right there is all an automated process that you don't have to worry about it at all. When it comes down to doing it for your buyers, you simply go in there and enter every address or MLS number, and you schedule this thing. You say go, it goes out and it contacts every agent. You don't have to do it.
Cool. I kind of like that.
There's another example of Ontario being behind the times. Most of our boards do not have that good option where now we're still picking up the phone and calling every every brokerage individually and then waiting for the confirmations is not. Treb does have something that they use, but last time I used it, it wasn't that great, to be honest.
We have Lone Wolf, but that would work a lot better if it didn't crash on a regular basis.
And everyone would be using it, would help. So
Yes.
There's so many different offices that using different things. Do get good question here on Twitter. Do you find that using a tablet makes your listing presentation into a presentation versus a consultation?
Wow. Yes. Yes, it's presentation, but at the same time, it's how you handle it when you're sitting in front of your client. Are you sitting there and just verbatim going through each slide, or are you going through the slide, showing the slide and hitting the highlights, hitting the bullet points, and actually talking to them? It's a presentation, but at the same time, it's a consultation. So I think it's a combination. It's how strong you are when it gets down to, how comfortable you are in front of that client as to how it's presented to them.
I think for a lot of people it probably is just a presentation and not a conversation, because I think it's a crutch you could very easily lean on to just say, look at all these fancy stats I've got. There's not actually my conversation aspect of things. So I think it's going to be, when you're training yourself to use the iPad, it's also going to be training yourself to not always lean on the iPad. It's something you need to be aware of, keep it going. And I find the the pre-built templates that I have for every listing presentation I do helps with that. Because it's like, ask question here, ask question here. You're going to have that conversation. You're going to take those notes. You're going to look like a superstar because you actually thought about it. And eventually you remember your template without having to actually look at it. Which, because your templates, when you're using it, it should be prompting you to ask those questions. Because otherwise, if you're just sitting there and spewing information at them, you're going to be fairly forgettable because you just sat there and talked, and people love to hear themselves talk, so you should give your client an opportunity to actually speak up.
Yeah, and that's something that, that's what good presenters do, like people who are presenting to a massive class, or professors or teachers or whatever, like getting that engagement, making sure that they're or trainers. I was alluding to that a little bit. That's what fun class it is engaging with people and stuff like that, and it's to both your points, more of a conversation and like, hey, I'm going to show you some stuff, but let's talk about it together, sort of thing. And so, by the way, Donna, you were talking about how you put, actually, Tom, you were mentioning it too, how you put things into your calendar to make sure that you have things right where you need them and all the addresses and stuff. There's a really awesome app for that I recommend. I don't know if it's available in Canada, but it's called Tempo. It's something that I use every single day. I have the addresses for everything that I put into. I use obviously my Apple calendar, but the Tempo syncs with Google Calendar, Apple Calendar, every Outlook calendar, everything, and you can just quickly open up the app and tap on the address, and it opens up your Google Maps and gets you directions to wherever you need to go. So
alternatively, if you're a pure Google user, then you have Google Now on your devices, which Google Now is absolutely phenomenal because Google is that creepy stalker that you're actually kind of okay with it stalking you because it's useful. So my Google Now, which for those of you who don't know what Google Now looks like, it is available on all of the new devices. You just literally swipe to the side, so home screen, Google Now.
You can also get it on Apple.
You can get it on Apple as well. I just find it works better when you're using all Google devices, much like Apple when you say use Apple TV, but it only works with your iPhone type situation. But getting slightly more on topic here, it gives me a summarization of my today's agenda. I can click on each one of those, and when I click on it, it's like, yeah, you've got this. Here's the direct map link. You click on it, it shows you that. It also has push notifications, so it gives the whole it is time to leave for your appointment because there's really bad traffic because Google has stalked you and everybody else on the face of the earth to tell you that the 417 is entirely backed up. From there, I always use Google Maps as well because, or Waze. I do love Waze, but it just Google Maps syncs a lot better with everything else. Will actually tell me, get off the highway at this extremely obscene point that you would normally would not ever get off at, but there's a 2-lane closure up ahead, so it'll save you those extra time in traffic. But Google now also reminds me of places that I didn't put in my calendar, which is where it starts getting super creepy, because it recognizes the fact that every Wednesday night I go rock climbing. It's not in my calendar, but every Wednesday it tells me here's how long it's going to take you from your current location to get to a rock climbing gym.
Yeah, I love that feature. It happens all the time. Like I'm at work and I'll just look at my phone and pull it up and I'll be like, if you left right now, it would take you, 47 minutes to get home. Oh, we're going to change your route. Yeah.
I'm being stalked. Big Brother is watching, and yet I'm kind of okay with it because it's useful.
Yeah. If you submit to it, your life will be easier.
Yeah.
If Google were a dude, I would have called the cops by now.
Some crazy Aaron Andrews, Taylor Swift stalkers coming after you. So you were talking about Evernote and storing things in Evernote, and one thing that I've seen some people do is use Evernote to store their transaction documents and transaction emails in the same place instead of having all their emails in a file on their Gmail and then having all the documents in Dropbox. Just have things in one place at the same time is pretty cool, and then you can have that instant recall where someone calls you and they need something and you pull over and open up Evernote and find oh yeah, I got that email, and oh yeah, I have that document right here and everything. Just having, as both of you guys said, having everything in one place, having everything in the cloud makes life just so much easier.
Definitely does. And that I'm not a big Evernote fan yet. I've dabbled in it. I would love to sit down with you guys one day and just have a one-on-one, but because I understand that it's a fabulous program, but to have everything like you said in one spot, whether it's DocuSign, whether it's Dropbox, just have it in one spot to where you know where it is. If somebody asks for it, you go directly there and you can get it to them.
What I often tell people about apps, so something like Evernote, really what the best app for you is the one that you're going to commit to using all the time. For me, I used Evernote for a while and didn't use it a ton for the first 6 months I had it. Then once I actually dove in, just put everything there, use it every day, that's when it became really useful to me. So it just depends on what one you're comfortable using, and you're going to dive in and use it daily. That's when it gets really good.
Yep.
I think that's one of the importance of minimizing the amount of apps that you're using. So finding something that is really feature heavy, like Evernote, does come in handy. I don't use all of the features in Evernote. It is a massive application that can do tons of different things, but I don't necessarily need all of those things, or that I find something else that does it better. But you want to keep it as minimal as possible, because if you're having to switch app after app, especially you want to find apps that work well with other apps. Make sure each app can talk to this one, Evernote and Dropbox work together really well. Google works well with everything, unlike Apple, because I had to take that pot shot. But
I'm going to mute you.
But yeah, I think that it's really important to just get as many apps that will cover as many tasks, or as few apps to cover as many tasks as possible.
You don't want to do an app overload.
Exactly. That's the problem that I find is people are just using way too many apps these days, and you got to kind of pare it down to the ones that actually matter. With that, though, we're going to wrap up today. It's been about an hour. It was a good conversation. So before we go, though, if you could each just remind everyone where to send you a referral if they have any, and the area that you'd like them for. So we'll start with Tom.
Well, we pretty much work anywhere around the Indianapolis area. You can definitely send your referrals out to sold@thewatkeys.com. That comes to both Judy and I, and we definitely be able to help you, and we look forward to any referrals that you might send our way.
Perfect.
And I handle all of the Ottawa area, because unlike the GTA, you can pretty much handle a lot of Ottawa. I have a specialization in the West End, but any referrals that anybody wants to send for Ottawa, whether they be military or first-time homebuyers, doesn't matter. Our team covers everybody. It would be donna@susanandmo.com, or just add me on Facebook, because I will add just about anybody to Facebook.
Complete the Big Brother circle.
Yep.
All right, so thanks everyone for tuning in today. Make sure to stay tuned for our next episode on May 11th, and it's going to be all about blogging. And It looks like we're going to have someone who does a written blog and then another person who has a video blog. We're just waiting to confirm a few details, but should be a great episode all about blogging. So otherwise, thanks for tuning in today, and to get the recording, you can find it on Rise. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.